The views and opinions expressed in this content are that of a continuously evolving nature and are subject to change as humanity evolves into higher states of awareness.
I'd like to talk now about somebody I met, went to see, and he changed my life a lot, this fella. And I know he's very famous and a lot of you would have watched him. And his name is David Icke. And when I was at Kindred Spirit to begin with, the lady who ran it, she said, I'm going to take you to a theatre next week and we're going to see this fella. She never told us what you did or anything. So we went, and I remember when he came on the stage and he started talking, the first thing he talked about in those days was, and we're going back when there was very few people in the audience. It was 25 years ago when this happened, and he put his own chairs away in the end, afterwards, and you were able to talk to him, which was brilliant. And so he said that he was going somewhere, and it was a hot day, and he decided to park his car, and there was a bit of a hill either side of this road, and he went and sat on this hill, laid on this hill, because he wanted to rest, and opposite was all these sheep in the field. And he said along came the farmer in his car, and the dog got out and he started putting the sheep into the pen. And all the farmer did was whistle or call out to the dog, and the dog was doing all the work, but there were 3 sheep that wouldn't do it. And they ran all over the field, and the dog got really angry. And eventually they got 2 of the sheep in, but one of them would not go in there. And I was sitting there thinking, don't you do that? You've got free choice. He's sitting there, and he was all for the sheep that wouldn't go in the pen. But the dog had to draw blood before he got him in there. And then they closed the gate, and the farmer went off. And he said, I started thinking about that. And he said, I was right at the beginning of all what I was finding. And I thought, that's what we're like. We're sheep. And the dog is our policemen and soldiers. He said, and the farmer is your government, your top of the tree. And they're creating, they're using our lives to what they want, putting us in our own little pens. And he said, I got to think a lot about that. And he got me thinking about it as well. And I always remember that was the first thing he talked about. But he also talked about going to America and saying a few things that I said, if you say that in America, they'll kill you. And I said, you're not going to say what you said to us in America. And he said, Anne, I will say for word to word what I said on that stage to you. And I said, well, I hope you've got good bodyguards. And he said, I don't need bodyguards. He said, the day I die is the day I die, and I'm not bothered. And I thought, wow. And so we went to see David Icke. Whenever he was around, we went. I put people onto his books and everything. I thought he was wonderful, and I watched him grow. And then, of course, one day he comes out with his, and he says, I've got to say something. I don't want to do it, he said, but I've been told I've got to do it, and you're going to think I've gone crazy. And he talked about the reptilians, and he even had pictures of them and what have you, drawings. And I thought, you've lost it, Dave. Nobody's got. They're going to put you in the loony bin now, because I didn't know anything about that then. And he really didn't want to do it. Another thing that happened with David was I got to know a chap who was in Kindred. His name was John, and he used to help David with the money. He used to sit and take the money for him when he was in our area. So he knew a lot about David Icke. He met him socially. So I said his name was John, and when I met him, and I said, tell me some things about David. And he says, well, one night, he said when he first started, he said, I was taking the money, he said, and this old man came in, really old. He said, and he had an old paper bag. Do you remember the brown paper bags before plastic bags? And he had this, and it had been raining, and it was practically falling to pieces, but it was full of papers. And he came up to the desk and he said, "Would you give this to David Icke for me?" And he said, "Yeah, just stick it behind, in that corner." And the man went. He said, never saw him again. He said, "Well, I at the end of the day, we're clearing up, and I came across this bag, and I said to David, I said, an old man bought you this bag." He said, it's in a bad state. It's got wet and it's got ripped." And he said, just put it in my bedroom. So apparently, what happened with David, he told John, he said, when he does a talk, it really wears him out, as you can imagine. So he has to unwind. So when he goes to bed, he unwinds. He needs quiet, and he needs to settle down. And apparently he saw some papers, and he picked up the papers from this bag, and what he got was dynamite. The man would not, he gave him something. He was a whistleblower, in other words, but it was frightening stuff for him. And so I think David gets a lot of his stuff that way, that people go to him and give him things that they are not prepared to go on a stage and say it. He gets a lot from spirit as well, but I think he does that. And a friend of mine, she was taken to see David, but with a boyfriend, and she was only young at the time, but she's always seen spirit and what have you from a child. And she said, he never told me who he was. He just said, "I thought you might like this bloke." And she said, as David came on the stage, she said, I saw him psychically. I didn't see him as he is now. They showed me his true self. And she said he was magnificent. She said he was so old, it was unbelievable. She had a long beard. She said he had a staff. He was bent over. And he had a golden cloak which went right across the stage as he walked. She said, and he walked very slowly across the stage. And then he stood in front of the microphone, and he turned into David Icke. And she said, but what he had around him was incredible. She said, he had Roman soldiers, they have shields. She said something like that, but they were giants, and they were golden. There is protection, and he has protection of beings around him. He is well protected. He doesn't need bodyguards, and he knows it. I met him many years later, and he came and talked to me, and I told him about it. He never denied it, but he looked at me as if he said, "Oh well, there you go." He wasn't amazed, actually. So whether anybody else has seen him like that, I don't know. But I think he's one of the masters that's here myself. And I think he's a very brave, wonderful man. And you don't have to believe everything he says if it doesn't gel with you, but a lot of what he says. And I saw him when he first started, and what he was saying has come true. And we watch him a lot now on YouTube. He's on that since I found it. And but I'm very fond of David. And the last time I saw him, I hadn't seen him for a few years because he doesn't come up our way now so much. And he came to Hull. And we went to this hotel, and we were sent through the wrong door. And we were supposed to go into where everybody sits. And we went where David was. And he walked into me and he said, "Hello, Anne." He said, "God, I haven't seen you for years." And I said, "You recognise me? You must meet so many people." And I was with my friends from next door, and we told him that we knew David, and he said, "You really do know him, don't you?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Of course we do. We've met him, we helped him," because I used to do a lot for him at one time. And it was nice because, but his arthritis is pretty bad. He stood on the stage, and it was boiling hot, and he would not have a drink of water. I kept thinking, "Drink some water, David, drink some water." He was sweating, and his arms were so twisted, and oh, bless him, he must have been in a lot of pain, but, when you see people doing that sort of work, you feel you're not doing anything. I feel that because, you know, there's another chap I know who's called Philip Day, and he's all for nutrition, and he's for people got cancer and that sort of thing. I call him the cancer man, and he's taught me such a lot about cancer, and he's horrified what happens to people with cancer, and he told me. I mean, it's been the first cancer charity was 117 years ago. Where is that money going? Why isn't it being paid to cure cancer or to give people who've got cancer to help them? Because the money goes on flyers and on buildings and wages. I don't think it goes on anything to do with cancer. And I think if you give to charity, you're killing people, not the other way round. But people are so frightened of it, they take it. You know, they pay the money.